Hello and welcome to the Little Minds Big Ideas podcast with the Early Years Network. We've got a good one today.
We have.
We're throwing our 2 pence back in about the big O.
The big O.
Ofsted. But before we dive into that conversation, we are just going to talk about what is new on the platform.
What is new?
What is new on?
I used to make little jiggles.
So if you don't know, the podcast that we do every week. It's the both of us, and we sit and we chat all things early years.
And the wider world.
And the wider world of society and all sorts, all good fun. But what we have on www.theearlyearsnetwork.co.uk is a learning and development platform for everybody in the early years, whether you're in a setting, you're in a reception class, you're a childminder, you are a nanny, whatever it might look like, or a parent with young children, working with young children. We are designed to support you to further children's development.
In a very Netflixy style with additional resources and bits and pieces to go along and support that learning.
And it is us. It's our faces. So if you like listening to the podcast, then hopefully you'll probably like listening to us over on the platform too.
Hopefully.
So this week, new on the platform, we've got my class all about strategies to support de-escalation of emotions. So when children are at that heightened state and you want to try and bring them down, what is it that you can do? What can you put quickly into practice to support that de-escalation? So that is live on the platform now with downloadable resources and practical tips that you can actually put into practice straight away.
And it's a nice, really easy and quick learning is a strategy as well.
Yeah.
You have that initial class that is actually free and available over on YouTube as we speak. The initial context and the science sort of behind the strategies that you go and talk about. But the 5 strategies are really bite-sized and easy and nice to pick up. The learning's really simple. It's not arduous. You're not sitting there for an hour. It's literally minute-long classes, isn't it? 2, 3, 4 minute-long classes, breaking down each of these strategies. And there's something you're looking to do more and more, aren't they, over the coming months with the strategy videos and actual, not just the theoretical, not just the sciencey stuff, but also the actual practical strategies, implementations to help and support day-to-day practice effectively, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. And then coming up in the next week, we've got Olivia's class all about baby movement. So it's those that first signs of movement and physical development for babies when they are getting ready to scare the life out of us and move around.
And it's actually a really good class to share with parents as well.
Yeah.
Like I've obviously seen well over half it now from editing it. And not only is it going to be beneficial for baby room staff and helping develop your baby room teams, but also sharing it through parent partnership with parents, because there's a lot in there that I think, especially first-time parents with newborns, getting this information other than bits and tricks they pick up from nurses and the NHS.
Yeah.
It's valuable information.
Yeah. So that is what is new on the platform at the moment. So if you've not been over to check out the platform, have a look.
You can get a free trial for 48 hours.
Yeah.
And that gives you the ability to unlock one whole class.
Yeah. So have a look and then join us to keep making our early years industry more knowledgeable and even better.
And that's what's new on the Early Years Network.
Do-do-do.
Do-do-do.
Okay, so that was quite good.
I know, we need to invest in this a little bit more, don't we?
Yeah, a low budget jingle.
It always reminds me of, what was it? Was it Little Britain or something like that, when he was like, I want to write the theme tune and I want to sing the theme tune and I want to do.
Was it Family Guy?
No, it was something English. It was something like Little Britain. I don't know if it was, but it was those guys.
Oh, write the theme tune, sing the theme tune.
And then you just sit in the office and you just start whistling or something.
What's that? We'll find out after.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
We'd have Googled it by then, but...
Well, let us know. Okay, so jumping into our meaty topic of the week.
And the thing is, with talking about Ofsted, I don't want this to be... Because so often, when anybody talks about Ofsted in early years, they just get bashed from pillar to post.
Yeah.
And Ofsted are often seen as the big bad guy. And a lot of what Ofsted get shouted at for is actually stuff that comes from the Department of Education. It's government-led. It's all often to do with whether it be funding or whether it be to do with laws, the implementation of rules and regulation, when Ofsted often just here to oversee, and they're given the mandate, they're given the rules, they're given what they have to do, and they carry it out and make sure and inspect that we are following out the same procedures and guidelines. So I don't want this to just become another slander. I'd like this conversation to be actually a practical and really analysed. If not Ofsted, what are the flaws? What else?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? What else is there? What are the solutions?
So to kick us off, do we think that one day is enough time to make a judgment on a setting? Personally, no.
But I think they recognise that, and I think they know deep down. I mean, I think often this conversation is going to stem back round to just the practicality of it, like funding from a funding point of view, from a manpower point of view. They do the bare minimum they can. And they do the best they can within that bare minimum, probably.
I mean, bigger schools, I think it's sometimes 2 days or however long it is, depending on the size of the school. But I think in early years...
It used to be a week, schools. Am I imagining that?
I don't know.
I don't know if when I was in school, was it a week or was it always just a couple of days?
It might have felt like a week to you as the child.
It didn't really affect us as children, though, did it?
I remember in secondary school, some of our sixth form students were asked not to attend the day Ofsted came.
Right, okay.
Please just stay at home, please.
To be fair, my local school, the secondary school I went to most recently, had an awful Ofsted report.
Yeah, it did.
That was horrific, talking about homophobic abuse and unruly students. And what was that one sentence where it's like, this school...
Children are not set up for life in modern Britain. that was my favourite line. Oh, Jesus.
Crikey.
What is modern prison?
The thing is that
how do you prepare for it?
You can just walk in and kids do say ridiculously horrific stuff.
Funny. It's not funny at all, but
yeah. So and then this is a very rural England. This isn't an urban school. This is very rural Britain. Is this school? Crikey. Anyway,
so one day I don't think it's enough. I think it doesn't highlight and. Kids can have bad days, adults can have bad days. The kids don't know why everyone's on edge and who the strange person in the room is. And it doesn't, I know they're there to inspect and I get that, but it doesn't feel supportive sometimes when it's one day and everything you've done in the last potentially 6-7 years rides on that one day and that one moment.
That's the problem, isn't it, with Ofsted? It's because it's that one day inspection, and everything really for them is shaped around safeguarding and ensuring that these settings are doing what they should be doing to protect children, which is absolutely fundamentally the most important thing and 100% should be their priority. But the problem is they're so stretched because that's their priority and that's what they've got to focus on and that's what they're looking for. When that's your priority and you're only there for 6, 7, 8 hours, it's then hard to mash in a really deep inspection into education, a really deep inspection into all of those other areas of learning and development. And
unless it's really thrown at them in a positive or a negative way.
Yeah, unless it's striking. Yeah, you're right. And I genuinely think that's how they do it. I genuinely think they walk in and they immediately get a sense of, right, let me hone in, make sure everyone's on board with safeguarding. Let me make sure these children are safe. Let me make sure the staff understand this and are following along these outline and guidelines. And then after that, it's does it jump out on me? And I honestly think they make that opinion incredibly fast when they walk into a setting and then they look for reasons and justifications to support that. They'll turn around and say, no, they don't. But I almost think it's human nature. Like if I walk into settings, I immediately can get a feel for the place. Yeah. Straight off the bat. Very rare will I walk into a new setting I've never been in before and have an impression of the setting, and then 3 hours later go, actually, you know what? I was dead wrong, because you can just feel it.
Yeah, don't you?
You can sense it immediately through the interaction that people are having with children. And don't get me wrong, staff members, when there's someone new in, can get a little bit nervous, can get a bit like, okay, who's this? I get that, and that does play a factor, but you can tell if someone's nervous or not. You can then tell if interactions
are normal practice that they do. Yeah. And that takes us on to the quality and consistency of things. So you just said, you instantly get the feel. Some people might not. Some people do. Some people that inspect early years don't work in early years. Yeah. They're primary school teachers or lecturers and things like that. So that's where I think consistency comes into it, because what I look for and what you would look for would be different.
Yeah.
And that's why I think yes, we've got the inspection handbook and we have to go through that, but everyone's opinion is different. I think that's fine. because everyone's opinions, otherwise it would be boring. But there has to be a level of consistency in that we had 3 Ofsted inspections in the space of 18 months across our settings, all just routine inspections. And every single one of the days was completely different. And I think what frustrates me more is that consistency in terms of length of time in a setting, length of time speaking to parents, length of time in each age group, talking to staff members, in deep dives into children's learning journeys. It's all so inconsistent. And that's what frustrates me. If they have to tick off certain boxes, they should be doing it the same. If they have to speak to 25% of parents on the day, they should speak to 25%. I don't know what they come out with. No. If they have to speak to 3 key workers across 3 different age groups, do they do it in the rooms, or do they have to try and pull them out and we have to cover that person coming out? Those are the types of things. And I think that's just done so inconsistently that you can't prepare for it.
But we had one inspector come out and didn't even talk to any parents.
Exactly.
And that's why I genuinely believe it doesn't matter, that they make up their own opinion outside of the framework they work with.
Yeah.
I think as a human being,
but that's what
they go in there
wrong.
And but I agree. But I think the only way then you solve that is going down a pathway again of almost turning them into robots and creating tick lists. And
no,
there's 2 ways of solving this. There's option number 1, where you turn it into robots and you turn them into tick lists, and they have to go through this tick list and go, and then it produces some sort of score, and that's what you get. Or you go the opposite way and you put more emphasis on training Ofsted inspectors, and you go for a higher caliber of inspector. And that's easy just to say. That's a really easy thing just to sit here and say, 'cause that's probably quite a difficult recruitment drive. And you end up with a higher caliber, and you put more onus on their individuality. But that isn't going to give you more consistency.
No, but the one thing that frustrates me is when somebody is an Ofsted inspector, it's their second, that it's not their main day-to-day.
That's cost.
I know it is, and that's what I'm saying. That's where I think it is the problem, because actually I spoke to someone who is an area manager, I think she was, for a big nursery chain, and she just has to go to the Ofsted training twice a year and do 1 every 6 months to keep her going. I'm sure that might not be the right numbers, but it was along those lines. And you think, if you're an Ofsted inspector, you should be an Ofsted inspector. I'm not an Ofsted inspector. But if I was, I'd be like, right, okay, this is what I do. I am an Ofsted inspector. And put your money into it. It's got to be funded. It's got to be funding into the department. It's 100%. But it's like, we have the network and we have our nurseries, and the network is I love doing the network because it drives our settings 100%. But even splitting my time between the 2 can be difficult.
Yeah.
How could I be an area manager of something and an Ofsted inspector when you're an Ofsted inspector, you going out, like what you say and do on that day is somebody else's result?
Yeah.
That's their livelihood. Somebody's business is at stake, someone's jobs and parents and children's educations. And I think that's where, when we talk about funding and is that the problem? I'm kind of jumping around here, sorry.
I know you are.
Is that where we need to focus it? Because there's lack of funding into the early years anyway. And I can imagine that Ofsted inspections for schools might be in a similar boat, that that's not solely what they do. Do you know what I mean?
I would have thought so, yeah. But they use a lot of head teachers and stuff from other areas. I often hear.
Yeah.
Look, like I said earlier, there's not an easy way to resolve this. And people often want things, and then when they get it, they go, I want consistency. Well, if you demand that so much, you will end up with an Ofsted inspector on a very short leash.
I don't think it's consistency in that sense, but everyone...
That's what people say.
Yeah, but everyone in early years has to follow the EYFS, statutory. Mm-hmm. How we do it is different. Mm-hmm. How you provide learning opportunities. So in that sense, we are all similar. Mm-hmm. We will have to do that. If they're following an inspection handbook, there has to be some consistency.
Yeah.
Because what we do has to be consistency. Ratios are consistent across the board of the country. The learning outcomes are consistent across the board of the country. We all have the 7 areas. Do you know what I mean? There's certain things.
But Ofsted would probably argue that is the case. That inspector who came out and didn't talk to parents probably broke protocol.
Probably. But then we sat there and was like, there's no point even complaining because they don't get anywhere.
They have since altered their complaint process, haven't they?
They have.
At the start of this year. So,
yeah.
Look, I don't know. It's coming back to the quality of the inspectors more than anything. That's what I would like to see.
So is that lack of funding, is that where you'd put it?
You put funding all over the early years, didn't you? But it's interesting because we had a conversation the other day with somebody from South Africa, and I don't think I'm saying that the South African system is a hell of a lot better than ours, but it was interesting how they broke down education, safeguarding, and there was another area. There was three departments running in unison. And I just found that interesting in the sense of we try and do and shove everything into just an Ofsted inspection.
Yeah.
Rather than having multiple different departments. The only problem is the more departments you have, then there's more areas and more scope for inefficiency, and there's a massive more cost on it. It slows process down. It doesn't always make it more effective or more streamlined. No. You just add more bureaucracy involved in the mix. It's a difficult one. It genuinely is looking at Ofsted. I don't think there is an easy answer.
No, I don't think there is either. But the stress that it can cause for practitioners and educators is massive, like huge. When you get that phone call, your stomach drops.
Yeah.
And is the outcome of Ofsted worth that anxiety?
I think that plays into the whole discussion around the one line.
And the one day.
And it's the one day. For me personally, when we have this conversation, on my view on Ofsted and where I sit on Ofsted, I would love to see Ofsted become more of a partner.
Yes.
As opposed to a critique. I'd love to, however we can reframe this, however we can work it and structure it, I would like Ofsted to come more to settings. I'd like, or at least somebody within the councils, to have more of a support network to work with settings. Some councils are very good at it, not some others. But it'd be nice to see, I know they do the big conversation, but big conversation events for Ofsted nowadays just become people just moaning. And there's nothing really beneficial from them. Because Ofsted, at the end, it's the same old two people, 9 times out of 10, bless them. They have to stand up there, they take a load of flack, and then they move on.
Then they leave, yeah.
And in reality, it'd be nice to see Ofsted more on the ground, more vivid, coming out more often. And that doesn't mean they don't remain impartial, because I understand the importance of impartiality and being able to come out and inspect and make sure you're following and protecting children. But then have your inspections done by people who don't come out and frequently visit. And it goes back to cost now, because I'm now tenfold increasing the people within
that's
Ofsted.
Where you fund it and you make different departments within Ofsted to have, right, okay, you're the support, this is the support department, these are the inspection department. You work, these are your settings, you've got to work with them and grow. And then that's what you say, that's your early years advisor. How many settings actually have communication with their early years advisor from their council?
Yeah. But the thing for me is, it's about trying to make that more of a positive relationship and a more positive and more beneficial for people, as opposed to at the moment they come out and what they produce, like I've always said, is effectively just a brochure for parents. Yeah. It's not a meaningful document for leaders within early years to improve their setting. You get at most 30 odd words at the end.
That's interesting, because I think they are meaningful for settings who are struggling, because they really go into detail about what needs to be done and changed.
It tends to be more on the safeguarding side of things though, doesn't it?
Not always. Think about the Ofsted report we just read. There was a hell of a lot in that needed improvement.
Yeah.
And that, if you receive that as a new manager, you know exactly what it is you are looking to improve on. If you say but
it's still focusing on the basics, isn't it?
But if you're getting them wrong, then yes, you probably do need to focus on the basics. You need to support on that. But it's when you get it good and you're reaching for that outstanding, and you get 3 things to work on that are it's minute things that you just think, well, we do that, but unfortunately on the day nerves are high and we can't let somebody just.
I guess the flip of it is Ofsted's responsibility to make you and your business any better than it naturally is anyway.
Probably not.
Ofsted often get moaned at a lot for, no, you don't give us support, you don't give us the help. Is it Ofsted's place? They're there to make sure that children are safe and protected, aren't they? You know, when you actually flip it round and say, well, what is Ofsted responsible?
You keep saying that Ofsted are responsible for them being safe and protected. So who's responsible to quality check the education?
But for that to be in place, you have to recognise early years as education. And if you look at the entire rhetoric of all the government parties, it's childcare.
By the time this comes out,
we will have a winner.
We will know.
We will.
We'll either have 3,000 new settings, we'll have no Ofsted, we'll have funding for all, or
we'll be bankrupt with the Lib Dems.
But
we'll have a banging early year sector.
Yeah, so let's have a conversation next week about that.
I can't believe the Greens won both 300 seats.
Can you believe it? Everyone outside, plant a tree. Anyway, so
this made this conversation pointless though, because they pulled the plug on Ofsted immediately.
Imagine. And this week on Little Minds, Big Ideas,
we're talking about something that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, sorry about that. Obviously, right now, we don't know who's won.
No, it's today. Today's polling day.
Today's polling day.
We're going to vote later on tonight, aren't we?
I would say go and vote, but it's too late.
Yeah,
you missed it. Right, back to...
We've done that every time. The Euro podcast, it was like, you should have already signed up. If you haven't, tough.
This time. Did you vote? No, maybe next time. Try again. Okay, back to Ofsted. So if not Ofsted, what else? What are we going to do?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Yeah. The thing is, I think you have to then fundamentally recognise and appreciate the vital role that Ofsted plays. You have to have an independent body.
You do.
To protect children.
You do.
Because even if you don't recognise early years as education and it is just childcare, you still have to make sure that those settings are doing safe. Because as much as we sit here, and I think everyone listening to this, settings are probably absolutely fantastic and the children are paramount and the safety is paramount, but there is some settings out there that are horrific. And
it very wrong.
There is people out there who work in early year sector, God knows why, but you do then hear the stories, you just think, flipping heck. Like the most recent one of the child who died, I can't remember where it was in the world, it was towards Liverpool or Stockport.
Yeah.
And the abuse of the child. So Ofsted play such a pivotal role in spotting that early.
Do you know what would be interesting?
And also giving...
to see the Ofsted report on that, I think.
And also giving people avenue for whistleblowing and things like that.
Yeah, and I think that's where my opinion on the fact that I think they do shine a light for parents as well as practitioners. You read an Ofsted report, if it's not great, you either go in there and you think, right, I'm going to make a difference, or you think, steer clear of that. It depends what you want to do as an educator. But for parents, the one word system, we won't get into that because that's all over the place. But if you actually sit down and read reports, they really can give an insight into a setting. And the most recent one that we read, oh my goodness, if I was a parent at that setting, I would have, I don't know.
Heartbreaking.
How do you comprehend that? And I think it's interesting because they can shed a light on poor practice for parents, and childcare is expensive. Yeah. Like taking your child to a setting for their early years education is expensive for parents.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it. There is funding coming in, etc. That's fine. But if you are paying for the service that you believe is going to educate the first 5 years of your child's life, you want it to be the best it can be.
And I also think for a parent, ultimately, you want to be rest assured that when you pick up your child, they're going to be happy and in one piece. And that's education, I'm sure, is important for a lot of them. But ultimately, I think if you spoke to a lot of parents, they'll just be happy to come home and their child be smiling at the door.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's so much pressure on early years educators because you are literally taking care of somebody's most prized possession.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some parents really struggle with handing their child over to even family members. So to hand your child over to, in effect, a complete stranger and trusting everything that they are doing is going to keep your baby safe is huge. And I think that is the responsibility that sits on everybody's shoulders. It is massive. And that's why when you get poorer Ofsted reports, it can shake things up massively because parents then lose that trust or they don't join the setting. And it can be, sometimes the one word doesn't reflect what's actually written. So if you are a parent, read the entire thing, read the whole report. Don't just go off the one word. And that's what we obviously always say, like that's probably what should be the first thing to change. But read the whole thing because sometimes that requires improvement. You read it and you think, why?
Do you think they would still work if you just removed the statements?
It would force people to read it.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I've never really considered what would be the impact if you just got rid of them. It would take a long time. It would take 5-6 years because you then have to inspect everyone.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure if it'd be better or worse. I'm not really.
I'm not sure.
I mean, at the end of the day, the way I see it, it generally tends to fall into: do you have safeguarding problems? If so, then you're going to be either requires improvement or inadequate.
Yeah.
Then you're good. And then if the person inspecting just gets a feel for the place, you'll get outstanding.
You get outstanding.
Generally, in my eyes, I would tend to see it and view it. From a leadership point of view, they don't really give me much because 9 times out of 10, if you hit good, there's very little in it. It was going to help you get outstanding. It's often very nitpicky.
It's those little pushy, over-the-top niche things that are going to do.
It's something that, the best one is practitioner over talking, because they want to prove a point. They want to see how good they are. And in that moment, in front of the Ofsted inspector, they overspoke children.
Adrenaline's higher.
But what do you want me to do about that? Like, that's not something we're going to work on for 5 years, is it? Because the odds are, one, that practitioner won't be with us by the end of that 5th year anyway. And 2, that particular instance I'm talking about, that practitioner was exceptional anyway. So
yeah,
they just made a mistake in the moment.
Wasn't even a mistake though.
No.
And it's adrenaline running through, nerves are high, you're chatting to children and you just didn't give them 14 seconds to respond to you because you've got your manager and your Ofsted inspector watching you. It's just...
Give me a practitioner like that who's cared and passionate all day.
Oh, I know, 100%.
Over anything else. But yeah, I just think it's
so difficult, yeah.
I think if you view Ofsted purely in the prism of safeguarding and protection, then that is what they do. The only problem is when they do the reports, they do creep over then into education as well. And that's what then causes that imbalance. And I think that's what gets people's goats up. And then it's the inconsistency of the inspectors, because some look at this, some look at that, some don't look at this. And then there's the whole chatter around it and the myths and things like that you hear. And it's just a combination of all of those elements. And what is the answer? Well, the answer is to fund Ofsted more and throw more money at it. But we're already in an industry that is dying out for more funding in other potentially more important areas.
Yeah.
And that's where the crux comes. That's where the problem comes, like any industry. And any industry where the government is involved and it requires public funding, you're always going to have deficiencies along the way, because the fact of the matter is there is just not enough money out there. Like, it is what it is. People, no. You want low taxes and loads of money going back into the system, and it just doesn't work. You know, and the bigger the country gets, the more people that live here, the older society is getting, the more of a strain it places on the NHS, the more money that needs to get thrown into the NHS. The other areas, I mean, I always see the police as a very good comparison to Ofsted. Not in terms of necessary protection and stuff, but a few bad eggs in the police force ruin it, and people's opinions of the police drops. But the police are criminally underfunded. You know, there is not enough police officers now there to effectively do the job that they need to do.
Yeah, true.
But who's the first person you call as soon as something goes wrong? It's the police immediately, regardless of what your opinion is.
Normally you.
No, but in all seriousness, as soon as emergency hits, the first people you ring is the police, and that's the way it should be, and that's what they're there for. But just because there's a few bad eggs, I can guarantee you 90% of the police force are fantastic human beings. But
maybe.
It may
be. God.
I don't know why I started talking about the police force.
Sounds like a shit show, doesn't it, Ben? Really, what you've just summed it up. Low taxes, no money, and tough.
Oh, I'm not, but I don't think there's an easy answer.
That's not an easy answer.
I don't think it is. If it was that simple, somebody clever enough would have fixed it.
Yeah, that's Ofsted.
That is the...
I want to know people's opinions, but I don't want it to become a slander show, like we said. I think the role of Ofsted is important. The role of what they do is crucial. And I don't think you can question that based on keeping children in earlier settings safe, 100%. But there is room for improvement, in different areas, and that's the conversation we want to have. Any Ofsted inspectors, or any Ofsted inspectors, let's get them joined in on the conversation.
Yeah.
Let us know. And
I mean, schools are a different kettle of fish to us, because schools do have... There is a massive... that's a big job. To go around the amount of years in schools and apply them, and then you get the complication of early years being in schools and the effects of that. And then you get more potentially now earlier settings in schools. It's just...
It was when we talked to Hayley last year and she said that she would get minimal time with Ofsted and actually just try and get them to come into the classroom because she wanted to show off what she was doing, and you just don't get the time.
No, it's
tricky.
It is, but
tricky, Ricky.
Yeah, I'm not. Abolishing it's not the answer either. I'm not really sure. I think that was more of a headline grabber, if I'm completely honest with you. Because you abolish Ofsted and then what? Like, you think a child's being abused and do you ring the police? Like,
who'd you go to? Yeah,
that just seems absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the police turn up? It's over like a fake complaint because somebody's disgruntled. I mean, that must be their biggest waste of money. The time wasters, people who, I don't like that manager, I'm going to ring Ofsted.
We report to Ofsted.
Well, they wouldn't have rung, would they? They'd email.
You have to
Ofsted.
fill out the form.
And that must be a colossal waste of money.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely colossal.
Yeah. So, that was a fun one.
It was. Well, yeah.
We've had election, Ofsted. Sorry, guys. We'll pick something a bit more upbeat next week.
We will go upbeat next week, but we've sort of come back at a time when we talk about politics.
It is all go, yeah, and what's going on in the world. So let us know your opinions. And that is us for this week.
Yep.
Check out the network platform. Like we said at the start, there's loads going on over there. Have a little look.
We're dropping more bits on YouTube as well now to give you guys a bit of a taster.
Yeah.
Some of the intros, like I said, your lesson 1. Just bits and pieces over on the YouTube page. Obviously, you can watch this over on the YouTube page as well. Lovely new set.
Yeah, you can look at our faces. And we will see you next Monday, 6 o'clock.
Well, indeed. Ciao, guys.
Bye.